She's funny, she's smart, she craves chocolate every day, and she is the Greek goddess of comedy. Here is your host, Ellen Karas.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Karas' Comedy Corner. My name is Ellen Karas, and we are back Zooming. This is the new norm. This is what we're doing till, I guess, we get permission to go back into the studio. But anyway, it's been great, and I appreciate all the guests that have been coming on. I am very excited about our guest today, but before we start, of course, we have to thank our sponsors. Our first sponsor is Baywalk Marketing. Go to their website, baywalk.net, for all of your advertising and marketing needs. They can help you with any kind of a flyer. They can help you analyze the demographics of your business. They're also experts in the Greek community. Go to their website, hollywoodgreeks.com, for all of your Greek entertainment needs, and hellenicfestivals.org to find out where there's a Greek festival near you. And although there haven't been Greek festivals as much this summer, what a lot of the churches are doing is they are making the food and having it for, you to pick it up for takeout, or they're just doing like the food. So check out hellenicfestivals.org. They'll have all of that information for you. Also, our other sponsor, Select Flex. What is it? It's an orthotic. What's an orthotic? You put it in your shoe. It's also called an insert. As a matter of fact, I happen to have the box. I happen to have some right here. It is a fantastic product. I never do it justice because I never hold the box up right, but you can find these on Amazon and their website, selectflex.com, selectflex.com. And with the turn of a dial, there's a little like key here. Again, I'm probably holding it upside down. You can adjust the arch, firm, extra firm, extra firm, depending on what your needs are. I do not work out without these. I have them in all of my shoes. And for Karas Comedy Corner listeners, there's a 25% discount. If you put in the code FAMILY25, FAMILY 25, you get a 25% discount. Or again, they are on Amazon. Selectflex.com. Check them out. Okay. I'm very excited for a whole bunch of reasons. For many years, I would wake up in the morning on Sunday mornings, and I put on WABC radio. I love traditional radio, terrestrial radio, as they call it. And there was a program, and it was called The Rev and the Rabbi. And I was addicted to this show on Saturday mornings. And what I called it was my pre-church church. So I would listen to this while I was, I had my coffee because they were on for an hour and a half, and getting ready to go to church, and it like prepared me to go to church. And there was a rabbi and a reverend, and boy, it was just such a great show. Now the show is still on. The Rev is no longer there. They have somebody else. He's great, but I just had this very special connection with the Reverend Kevin McCormack, who was the host for 9 years with Rabbi Joseph Potasnik on WABC 770 AM. And you can, now we have the internet, so, people live streamed it as well. And we followed each other on Twitter, and he'd give me shout outs sometimes. And then I put it out there that perhaps if some reason ever needed a co-host and the rabbi went on vacation, and lo and behold, my dreams came true. I put it out in the universe, as they say, I'm talking to a reverend. I asked God and we made it happen. And it was one of the most thrilling moments of my professional career. And I got to be at WABC radio station, which, by the way, is iconic. They were there for 40 years. They just moved locations. But if you are a New Yorker, you grew up listening to this, and to be there with where all those disc jockeys were and everything was great. To be in the studio with the headphones on, it was fantastic. But I really have grown to love Reverend McCormack, and he's so special. He knows the right things to say. I always found him very comforting. And he is also a principal. He is an educator. And I thought that now would be particularly timely to have him on, because school's going to start in a couple of weeks. We've been in this COVID thing. I mean, from everywhere, from educationally, spiritually, how to kind of get through this. There's so much unrest in the world, and I'm so happy that I do have my faith. And I think it's important to have. If you don't have sort of the traditional faith that we have, you have to have something. I think you have to have some hope, kind of hang on to some type of hope that everything is going to work out and work itself out. But he is the principal at Xaverian High School in Rockville Center. And without further ado, because I'm talking way too much, please give it up for my guest, Reverend Kevin McCormack.
Well, thank you. I can't thank you enough, Ellen. And I just want to, you've given me a promotion and you moved my school. So I'm only a deacon. I'm a deacon for the Diocese of Rockville Center. The school is in Brooklyn. No big deal though. But you got Xaverian right, and you get bonus points for that.
Well, we practiced it right before, but that's okay.
Right. But there are two X schools in New York, and one is Xavier, and they're the second best X school in New York. They're very good. They're in Manhattan, and the best school is mine in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. I remember very vividly you coming on the show, and it was a real honor because, like you said, we would talk back and forth. We would text one another, and there's a picture of us together, and maybe you'll put it up or not, but it's like Beauty and the Beast. I mean, because I look like Hagrid, and here's this petite, attractive woman, and she's doing her thing, and here's this big fat guy who's just kind of working with it. But there was a lot of dynamic. There was a lot of energy, and it was really, really very special. And I look very fondly on the time we were able to share together on the show.
Yeah, I mean, I was so, you gave me such comfort when I listened to you. You and the rabbi had a really wonderful chemistry. I mean, that whole concept was great. It was like Old Testament, New Testament. And it's funny because even in my faith, I remember, I don't know if you know Father Alex Carlutzos. He's pretty big, high up in the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese chain. A lovely man, and just he's done so much for so many people. But anyway, the point I was trying to make was I remember him saying to me, "Well, we all started out Jewish, so." And as you study more and just try to become a little bit more literate about it, you realize that is, that was the lineage, and that's how kind of it all started. And Christ, before Christ, he became Christ, was Jewish. So,
right.
so
Rabbi Potaznik and I had it was the show he has now is with Reverend Bernard, and he's A.R. Bernard. He's terrific, but it's a more formal. Joe and I it was sort of like two guys from New York just having bagels together and talking. Now it's a little more formal, and it went in a different direction, which is fine, and I wish them luck, and they're great guys. But we were like a neighborhood place, it was a place where clearly I have a voice that belongs in New York. And it was a very special time that I got to spend there, and I met some terrific people like yourself. Now I have a question for you. I know you're into, but so I follow you, and I've been listening to your podcasts and stuff, and I'm looking at the people you've had on before me, and they're very funny, they're very talented, they're very great, and I'm just figuring you ran out of people, and that's why I'm here.
Okay, first of all, you never run out of comics, okay? They're like cockroaches. They're everywhere. And all you have to do is ask. Everybody's, especially now, right? Like people are just jonesing to talk. But I really do like to mix it up. So I did have, he's not the priest of my parish, Holy Trinity on the Upper East Side. He's actually the priest on the West Side, the Annunciation Church.
Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful church.
Chrysostomos. And I got to know him because my church, some of us from my church, some of it from his church, and a couple of people from Long Island went on a pilgrimage to Israel, to the Holy Land, February of 2019. And I went, it was 10 days. And as a matter of fact, I went with my aunt came with me, who's also my godmother. And she's very, very influential in my life. And it was just, it is life-changing. It was really, it was so fascinating to go through that history. And especially, it was a good time in my life because I'm a Sunday school teacher. I've done a lot of, reading and reading up. And, had I gone 25 years ago, I wouldn't have appreciated it the way that I appreciate it now. To have gone with my aunt, she's also very knowledgeable. And then I love Father John, and I got to know Father Chrysostom, who's amazing. And they were just great. I mean, we focused on, obviously, the Orthodox and the Greek Orthodox churches and whatnot, but it was just fascinating. So he came on the show.
Okay.
And I've had trainers and nutritionists and authors and wealth managers and like all other kinds of people. But I mostly, yes, I do have a lot of comics.
Well, I'm honored to be part of that group. I really am.
And I just thought, again, it would be great to have you to talk about, first of all, what's happening in your school and and what happened. How did you guys, all of a sudden it was like, okay, we're closing down, and who's prepared for this? No, I mean, nobody, even the best of schools was not prepared for it. And from a scholastic level, a psychological level, a physical level, the kids, I'm sure somebody got sick in their family, or they knew somebody, or a neighbor, or, all of that, at once. It was just, your head was spinning, the lockdown, the masks, so how did you all, what happened? It's like, where were you? Like one of those moments in history.
Sure. You described it perfectly. So, March 10th, March 9th, we were preparing for the spring. It was Lent. We were getting ready for preparing for the Easter event. I remember spending hours on saying how we had a big meeting on how we were going to change the decorations from Lent, which are very dire and purple and sparse, and turn it into Easter. It was just we had hours meetings on this thing. Then we heard more and more stuff that people were beginning to worry. And then it was the 11th, and we said, you know what, maybe we have to start planning in case we have to be out for a couple of days or a couple of weeks. And so we had been involved in technological education for over 10 years. We were one of the first schools to use the iPad. So our kids and our teachers were fairly well versed on it, but they were versed on it in home and as an auxiliary tool, not one on its own. Then the 12th or 13th came, and everything, like you said, everything changed. Everything shut down. There was a basketball game. I think St. John's was playing, and they stopped the game in the middle of the game. At halftime, they said, everybody go home. And then there was a pall that was put over the whole community. And we had a plan that we said, all right, we can do this for 3 weeks. And then we had another plan that we could, invest, push it further. But nobody thought it would last like this. I have great assistant principals. I got great faculty. I got great kids. I got a great president, my boss. And we all kind of came together, and we did the best we could. And what we had to do is we had to, there's a great chef. I know this is audio, but if people saw me, I'm a big fat guy, and I love to eat and I love to cook. And there's a guy, Mario Bottoro, or something like that is his name. And he's fascinating. And he has this great line. He says, if the traditional recipe doesn't respect the ingredients, you have to find a new recipe. And that's what happened to us. The old recipe didn't work anymore. We had the ingredients, and now we had to come up with a new one. And that's every school in New York or across the country. We all had to do that.
I mean, talk about, and you're dealing with kids. I mean, now yours is a high school, they're a little more obvious.
I have 6 to 12, so I have 10 to 18-year-olds.
You have some, yeah. So you're young. So right. That's a wide age range.
Yes.
And then you don't want to kind of scare them so that all of a sudden now they're going to develop all kinds of neuroses and whatnot. Mm-hmm. I mean, you try to do this calmly as possible, but boy, it really just, it just hit everybody. So, we don't have children, but I have nieces and nephews, and then of course lots of friends with kids. So I got pretty much the gamut. And there were schools like yours that were a little bit more prepared. My nieces that go to the public schools, I mean, it took weeks before they even got into any kind of a rhythm. And then it was sort of like this Zoom thing. So I have my niece was in 10th grade, and she's she's high maintenance. Let's put it that way. So
I've heard some of your routines with her, and they're very funny. They're very funny.
Yeah. And oh God, she'll just make you want to really, you really have to have a lot of faith when you're around her. And so she would, as a matter of fact, she'd sleep over, and she would get up, get on Zoom, and go back to sleep. Like, I walked in, the computer is next to her on the bed, and she sounds asleep till like 2:00. And then later on, she would do the work and whatever. And I'm like, how come this isn't live? And she's like, because they can't handle it. And it was just crazy. Where my niece and nephew in Jersey, it was a little more structured like that, and they had to be live. And then, my godson, my nephew, who's 10, they had it was live 11:30. They had lunch. They got back. It was a little bit more structure, but boy, it's been a tough year for everybody. But even the private school, even the most expensive schools, like this really had no, economic line to it. You know what I mean? It's like everybody suffered in some way. And I know tutors got snapped up very, very, very quickly, for like those parents, I guess, that were able to see that this was going to be a long-term thing, because you didn't know. And then I'm in the city. So there was a mass exodus, Westchester, Long Island, New Jersey, who went here, who went there. Very, very strange. Some families have not come back. Mm-hmm. And some family, I live on the Upper East Side, so there's a lot of people that went to the Hamptons. Those Hampton schools are now like filled to the max because some people are coming back. Right. It's really, it just like that. It just changed. So what did you like? What about you? Like health-wise, how did you protect yourself? How did you protect the teachers? I know the kids haven't gone back to class, but still, right. Like the teachers had to go back to school.
Well, not yet. The teachers will go back, as we're recording this, they'll go back 3 weeks from today. This is, we're recording on the 18th, and we go back the 8th because Labor Day is so late. Before we left the school, nobody was wearing masks in those days because they didn't have enough masks, and they didn't know enough to tell us to wear the whatever we could. So we had sanitizer everywhere, and we were all kind of just rubbing our hands with alcohol everywhere you could. When we got into our own homes, then there was a lot to take care of, and I'm 60 years old, and I'm a big guy, and so I made sure I walked every day, to make sure my health was there, and took my vitamins, and I ate better. I'm one of the few people who lost weight over these last few months.
Oh wow! Congratulations.
I tease and I say I went from morbidly obese to just obese, so it's all good. But it was important, and as a deacon, I spent a lot of time at cemeteries because that was the only service we could do for people, was to meet them at the cemetery and to say the prayers there. So for about 2 months, I was at a cemetery every day, and it began to take a toll on me as well. And look, I was doing better than the people I was praying for, obviously, but it was surreal. It was just surreal. And there are a lot of reverends and rabbis and imams and priests and like, so it's not just me. There are a lot of people who are out there, funeral directors during those times. What they had to go through was just amazing, and nobody really thinks about a funeral director. It's not like one of your top 5, but these men and women, man, I worked very closely with them, and they were look, there's no need to go into it, but they worked their tails off, and they're one of the many unsung heroes. Like the kids at grocery stores, unsung heroes. They were there for us. They sat there, and they took our money and took our change, and luckily they were most of them. I haven't heard any bad news about that, but there's a lot. What I've seen, I think you too. What we've seen in the last several months is there are a lot of working class heroes out there, people who helped us to survive this and will never be known.
Right. When I got a glimpse of that, a big glimpse is like 9/11. I remember thinking to myself, when because I had worked downtown, of course, I didn't go to work for 2 months, And I remember thinking of like how everybody's job was important, whether you're folding T-shirts at the Gap or you're, the post office, or like everybody's job's important. I remember at that moment, I remember saying to myself, don't be such a snob. Like, look at these people, they're out there, they're, doing it, making it happen. So when this happened, it just, again, just sort of like reinforced. And then, obviously those people at the hospitals, whether they're mopping the floor or whether they're hooking somebody up on a respirator, everybody had a really, really important role to play. And just to get to my, to the mail person, coming in, delivering the mail every day with a mask on and gloves, and they were at the post office every day, and so yeah, it just, I mean, talk about makes you humble, and makes you think. So there was a lot of people that got to, had the luxury to still have a paycheck, work at home, be away from it, be away from maybe the hot spot. I mean, like that was, their kids were, making it through. I mean, that was the better case scenario, right, as opposed to the families who had somebody sick, they were in the hospital, what would happen? Knock on wood for me, family-wise, but in our parish, one of the priest assistants did pass. He, I don't know like the whole chain, but I know at some point he was on a respirator. Then he got off the respirator on a Friday, and he wound up passing on a Monday. Because as we know, those were the hardest to have like pulled through once you've been on the respirator and all it does to your body. But how did you as a man of the cloth, when this was all happening, like I'll tell you what I said, as a Christian, I said, okay, God's looking down and he's like, look at this, look at this disgustingness, look at this violence, look at this fighting, look at this, that's it, done, time out, everybody goes to your room. And because that's what happened. We got sent to our room, essentially, is what happened. I keep saying it too, and all these months later, it's something on a higher level, a lesson on a higher level. And so where did you think, what was your opinion spiritually, like as this was all going on?
There was two schools of thought that I had to struggle with at the beginning. And I remember in my church, a woman, an older woman said, God is getting his justice. And he spoke about, the people who had died. And what I find interesting is that the people who usually suffer during these things are poorer people of color. It's a tale of two cities. So my suffering, and air quotes suffering, was in a very comfortable, modest house in Southwest Nassau with 3 levels, 4 people in it. I never lost my cable. I never lost my Wi-Fi. I had plenty of food and drink and things like that. And so this was the great punishment that was coming my way. There were other families with 7 people in 2 bedrooms and in a 4 floor walk up. And so their experiences were very different. So I kind of ruled out the idea that God was, this was some kind of like Noah event and that he was going to start new. Because if he was, he could have done, coronavirus is horrendous, but it's not the bubonic plague. It's not the 40-day flood. And we will get through this sooner or later. Maybe it's 6 months from now, maybe it's 3 months from now, maybe it's 2 years from now. We are going to get through this. I don't think this is the end by any stretch of the imagination. So I began to think also, if God is our father, is this the way fathers and moms treat their kids? So I have 3 daughters. They're adults now, but they were teenagers, and they were crazy. They made me howl with grief, as David said about his kids. And my kids were intense. They were good kids. Don't get me wrong. If you met them, you'd tell me what wonderful kids. But in my house, they were like these little she-devils, that would run around. But there were times I didn't like them. There's no doubt about that. But I never stopped loving them, and they knew it. And so if I can do that, if you can do that with your niece, if and that's what their job is. I can't believe that God was going to throw this whole thing out or was going out of his way to destroy people. I think it's a misjustice to our God to say that. But I do like what you said, is that it did change things. And so the things that I took for granted, like security, I couldn't take for granted anymore. Like going outside whenever I wanted, one of my favorite things to do, I do it 3 times a year. I love going to a nice steakhouse. That's not happening. I can't go to White Castle, never mind a steakhouse. So these, and look, believe me, that's not suffering. It's different. Things I took for granted, I couldn't take for granted anymore. I was in my house with my wife. I have an autistic son who's a great kid, and so I don't want to give the impression like, woe is me. Terrific young man. And my daughter, my youngest daughter, we learned to eat together more. We learned to talk more. We fought less, but we had to work at it, And so I do think that this for me, and I'm only speaking for me, that this became an opportunity for grace. Now, we come out of it. I'm a Catholic. You're an Orthodox, but we're like we come out of 2 sister churches that are. We come from the same mother, and we just don't talk to each other enough. We believe the same thing. We understand the same thing. And I think what the Greek tradition gives, that the Roman tradition has, but not as way as you do, is this notion of spirituality and grace. And that's what Father Pappas, Eugene Pappas, who's known to many of your Greek. He was the first guy who put me on radio, by the way, and he's a chaplain at Xaverian. But he would always he's been very helpful in helping me understand more and more Greek spirituality, and it's so rich, it's so beautiful, and I think, and I realize I'm rambling, so I'll stop for a second, but I think what we see here is this need to open our eyes and look for the grace that abounds, and we find it like with that pimply kid who's putting my groceries in a bag, with the old lady who sits out in her yard. And when I was a kid, I grew up in the Bronx. Did you have the ladies who hung out over the windows and they watched everything? They were like the sentinels. Yeah. But I remember they would sit there with their rosary beads and they pray for everybody. The bus driver who gets on and then does that. The doctor who's working 16 hours a week. All of them, like you said, we all matter. That's what I'm taking out of it. And it hasn't been easy. We lost an aunt of ours, passed away, and we all suffered. People and loved suffered and who passed. But I think God gave us an opportunity. I don't think He gave us the virus, but I think He's allowing us to struggle with it and to say, realize where I am in the midst of this. I don't know if that makes sense. It makes a lot of sense to me. I don't know if it makes sense to you or to our listeners. I
do. I think it's you said it much better than I did.
Well, I won't tell jokes if you don't do religion, so we'll be all right.
Oh, well, deal. I do. We're coming from the same place. It's like, it's just the way that everything has happened is, I don't believe in coincidences. I think that everything has been planned out for us. We like to think that we're in control, but really we're not. That's the big joke. And just the way that like you said, the way that it came out. But what is very upsetting is how now, all these months later, so the first few months, everybody was helpful, trying to, work together, check on your neighbor, bring them food, when you go to the grocery store, go get them something too, because, not everybody can go, or they're older, whatever the case is. But now we're in this civil unrest. It's bad enough we have this going on. I understand that the situation with George Floyd ignited everything. Obviously, that was that's what lit the match. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Nobody in their right mind thinks that was right. I mean, we're all in agreement. But the way that everything has evolved is that's not going to solve that problem. It's certainly not going to do anything for getting rid of this virus. And it's, that's scary. And I'm not trying to make this political at all. I'm a very big accountability person. I think everybody's responsible for themselves. And unless you are, have a physical or a mental, disability or emotional or something like that, everybody's got to, God helps those who help themselves. And I'm not into this excuses. Like, we've all come from different places. And I'm also about respect. Like, just respect people. It doesn't matter who they are, what they are, and like my mother was a very big, like, mind your business. Like, I know we should care about people, but there's an element of like, you don't have to be in everybody's, just because they don't think like you, who cares? Or they don't live the same lifestyle that you do, who cares? Just worry about yourself, worry about yourself, and you get to hang out with whoever you want to hang out with. But we're in this place now, and I live in New York City. I'm watching it get destroyed. I have to tell you something. I listen I still listen to WABC, and Curtis and Juliet are on in the afternoon. Rudy Giuliani's on late. I mean, they go to WABC, and they all talk about what a horror it is downstairs in Penn Station. I haven't been down there. Honestly, I haven't really been much out of my neighborhood. I've gone over to the West Side, but it's been a while. But it's just getting worse and worse. I mean, we're away now for a couple of weeks, which is great because I really haven't been out of the city. But it's a horror, and we've gone from this like clapping at 7:00 to looting, to taking bricks and And I have to say, I've said this before on the podcast, and I just wanted to have to say this, and then I'm looking for you for like some guidance. But, when we started with the protesting and the rioting, and yes, you can have a peaceful protest. That's your constitutional right. No one's taking that away from you. But some of these are not peaceful. Isn't robbing. They don't go hand in hand. And when they went up to Fordham Road, you're a Bronx guy, and they lit that on fire. Who do you think those entrepreneurs are? They're Black, African-American and Hispanic business owners. So what you're proclaiming that you're, enraged about obviously has nothing to do with it, because you're destroying property. You're destroying everybody's property, including people that you're saying that to protect. So there's just so much going on. And I just I can't, this is what's scary. This is scaring me more than the virus. I felt like at some point the virus, it'll die down, it'll demutate, I'm not quite sure about the whole vaccine thing. I'm not quite sure. But it's okay. I mean, listen, if it works, great. I'm not someone said to me, would you take a vaccine that was made in Russia? I'm like, I wouldn't take a vaccine if it was made in Queens. But anyway, that's just me, So where, how do you see this? Like, I mean, all this going, Williamsburg, they went into Antifa. I mean, I'll say it, they're a terrorist group. They went into Apple and some of the other stores. I mean, what is going on? I can't wrap my head around it.
I don't know. I mean, I would be a very, very wealthy or very powerful man if I had the answer to that. But this is what I observe. There's a lot of anger, and the virus has certainly set a fertile ground for that. So when you look at least in the last 20 years, you look at 9/11 and you look at a superstorm Sandy. These were two events that shook our neighborhood being the metropolitan area, huge, our neighborhood of 16 million people. And the things that happened there, they were one and done. Now, that sounds horrendous. So please, let's keep it in context. What happened in 9/11 was not like, I tripped and fell. It was devastating. We all lost friends. We all lost family members. Everything changed, no doubt about it. Sandy, not 2/3, a quarter of my students and their families were homeless for several months, for several weeks because of that event. So that was there, but we could do something about that. So, we could rebuild, and when you went down to Rockaway or South Staten Island or into Long Island and stuff, people had things to do. They could do it together and they could make it better. We're now in a situation where we spend a lot of time, and the anger is there. And so I have a choice, and I can sit there and say, I don't understand this anger. And I don't. Look, I'm a middle-aged white guy. And I'm middle-aged. I'm very close to being an old white guy, And so for me to say, why don't they see what I see is not fair. On the other hand, I think I have a responsibility to understand, or at least try to understand, what is it like to be a young Black kid and work from there. And again, and we're not being political here. I'm not left, I'm right. I'm a Roman Catholic deacon in a Catholic school. That's what I do. I'm not Democrat, I'm not Republican, I'm not anything. But I think I have a responsibility to see that. That's not everything you said about the violence and the looting. No place for that. No place for that. That's absurd. And we also, who are we hurting? We're not hurting the quote unquote man. We're hurting some guy who put his whole life, or some woman who put her whole life into this business, and now it's put up. So you're right on that. But I can't do anything about that right now. But I can begin to say, where did the anger start? Like, why did this guy die? If I had been in that situation, would I have been put under that? I don't know. I have a lot of friends who are cops. I'm not demonizing cops. I'm not going to pretend and tell you I got a lot of black. I got 4 black friends, so I'm a good guy. You know, I don't. I have precious few. So I have to spend time, and this is really tough for me. And listen. You know what I mean? Listen, and not immediately say like, well, no, you know, and that's what we do. Isn't that what we do all the time? You know, left and right. So you know, whether you're Fox or you're CNN person, we do a lot of broadcasting, and we do a lot of pontificating, but we don't do a lot of listening. And I think I can't stop looting, you know, and I think it's died down. I've been in the city a few times. I go for these like mental health walks, and I've been doing them for decades. And you know, it's not the same, but it's I don't see a war zone, you know. But I mean, I'm walking on a Sunday morning, you know, or Saturday morning. But I do think we need to name calling, to stop ad hominem attacks at people, at sophomoric rituals, you know, that we kind of try and make people uncomfortable. And I can only do that with you, you know what I mean? Or the people I'm around. I can't stop a president or a governor or a mayor or a congressman or a senator. I can't do anything with them. I can vote and with my conscience, but I have to treat my neighbor. I have to treat my students. I have to treat my colleagues. I have to treat my kids and try and start on a one-to-one grassroots level. That sounds so Pollyannic. You know, I feel like I should have a Southern drawl and pretend I'm Dr. Phil, and, you know, all you have to do is be nice. And that's crap. But I think we have to try and work from that. And like, why is there anger like that? Now, why is there looting of a store? Because people are evil sometimes. You know, I'm not putting that up to the fact that being a black kid is not the same as being a middle-aged white man. But there is something there, and I got to figure a way to be part of that solution.
I agree with you, of course. You know, I love your sense of sensibility, and yes, we don't know until you walk into somebody's shoes, and there are enough voices for people to say that, and especially, you know, more it seemed like the young black men, you know, there is this unfair targeting or getting stopped and whatnot. And I'm not going to discount that because I've heard it way too many times, you know. So to me, you know, if I were running the city, you know, it'd be like, why is that? Like, we need to really, you know, I'm pro cop. I think the cops, what they do. My father-in-law was an ex New York City cop. We're very pro cop, but I'm not.
They never called him. He was a retired. Don't ever say ex cop. Right. Trust me, a retired cop.
That's true. He's retired and detective. And then I've had friends, but I'm not supportive of a bad cop. I'm not supportive of bad behavior.
Correct.
I don't care who it comes from, whether it comes from my sister, my husband. I'm just not. That's it. Nobody should be getting away with it. Nobody's above the law. I mean, that sounds cliche, but it's true. So if there is this, you know, this blue code of silence that they talk about, whatever, we do need to knock it down. But we also need to understand that when they go out in the street, they're partners. They have to have each other's back. Things happen in the moment. They have to protect themselves. Sometimes people don't listen. So when they say stop, they start running. That never helps. As we know, that never ends well. So, you know, everybody's kind of got to come to the table with this as well. I agree with you with the anger. You know, you and I grew up in an era where this sounds so layman, but like, we didn't have all of this stuff. We had stuff. We had enough to play with and to have fun, But and nobody loves nice things more than I do, but I do know that there has to be a sense of, just this materiality, because again, it's just stuff. And I think that we didn't grow up with laptops and $500 sneakers and phones. I mean, there is just a lot of things that a normal 14-year-old feels like they need to have. And I think that I know we're way past that. We're already there, but I think that has contributed to it.
Oh, 100% right. And look, there was always, I remember as a kid, if you had PF flyers or KEDs, that was one thing. Or if you had skips, that was another thing. And look, so it's certainly, I kind of shake my head when I see, a 13-year-old with a Tiffany bracelet or a Gucci belt. And those words, they mean nothing. I don't get it. I mean, I have my own things I'm into. I don't get that. My kids, my wife does, but like, I get it. But you know what I think is worse for these kids? And you're right about the materialism. You're 100% right. But here's the thing: when I was, I'm older than you, but even in your time, if you and I had a fight, there was no record of it. We had a memory of it, but there was no blow-by-blow, a written account on text or a video of, you're this, you're that. So you and I could have a major blowout, and if we would, two guys or two gals, because in my day, guys and men and women would never exchange punches with each other, and so if I was with my buddy, and actually one of my best friends is the only guy I've had a fist fight with, but it was done, it was over. And there wasn't a record of it, and other kids didn't, say, "Oh, look what McCormack's doing with this kid." And the thing that our kids don't have is the ability to take a beat, So even like if I was dating you, I wanted to date you, right? It would be a big thing. I'd have to wait till my mom was in the other room, and at 9 o'clock I would try and call you, and you may not be able to get to the phone, or you may. And so if you have younger listeners right now, they have no idea what we're talking about, because they would text at 2 o'clock in the morning. But like I remember, like. We had two phones in the house, and I would have to go on the phone, and I would be like, is Teresa there? and it's silly. Or go into, like, I do remember how silly is this, going like to a public phone, like about 5 blocks from my house, to call Teresa or whoever it was, and like, but our kids now, everything is instantaneous. Everything is, whatever you want, you can have it now. And even if my family stopped using Amazon, the United States would be in a recession. I mean, every day I get packages, and it's like, oh, I want this shirt. Boom, I got it in 24 hours. There's one of the things that this virus did for us, at least in March, April, and May, was it forced us to slow down. But now we're kind of itching, we're itching to go back. But I feel for my kids, because they don't have the luxury of being able to be jerks without everybody else knowing it forever.
Right. Everything is out there, and will remain out there for
forever.
Access it. I hear you, and again, especially for New York City, it's just like, everybody stop. And I'm very concerned, because I feel like some of these people that have come in and have caused trouble are not New Yorkers. They're from someplace else. And because for the most part, we've all lived near each other. Right? I mean, like, you're on the subway. I mean, just look at any line, 6 train, 1 train, it doesn't matter. There's a mix of people. Who gets up to, their seat. I mean, sometimes I'm like, who are these people? What, I've never, you see black and white couples.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you see friends walking down the street. I mean, she's like, when did this like, when are we the 60s? Like, when did this part of it happen? So I just feel like there's some external force that's really, really, stirring this up. These people come, they wear masks. We don't know where they come from. I don't know. It stinks.
It's scary. It's scary. But we're in a society now where kindness is seen as almost a weakness. Like, if I don't like you, I'm going to make fun of you. I'm going to give you a nickname. I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to push you aside. And that kind of discourse, it's almost as if sophomore boys have taken over the world. And I work with sophomore boys a lot. My whole life I've been with teenagers and as an educator, and I was one myself for a few years. And young teenage boys, for the most part, are idiots. They're freaking idiots, and they need mom and dad and aunts and uncles and grandparents and teachers and coaches and the ladies who are looking out the window to tell them, you can't do that. You may want to do it, but you can't do that. And I think we're in a society now where they look at their, they look at their music, they look at their politicians, they look at around, and all they see is people like fighting and being nasty with each other. There was a time when civility was a given. Now civility is considered a luxury, and like, oh, isn't that nice? They were so nice to me, whoever that was. I just want to double back a little bit and make sure, I do have a lot of cop friends, and I know guys who've literally given their own shoes to homeless people. I know guys and gals who have stayed and visited people that they brought to the hospital, and their name is Legion. We don't know their names. I know young kids of color who study hard and are going to the greatest schools, and at times they had to change their uniforms leaving my school to go, and they're working hard. So I just want to make sure that it's clear with everybody that there are great cops. There are great young teenagers, and even the crazy sophomores. That's their job. Our job is to bring them back. Right. I think we need to demand from our leaders in the media, in music, in literature, in politics, in the church. We do it in the church too. There are conservative groups, not conservative, forgive me. There are crazy groups, because conservative, liberal, that's fine. You be what you want to be. It's a flavor. But there are people who say things about bishops and about priests and about, that if I did that as a kid, my mother would smack me. Right. Like they're just mean. Time to stop.
So our parish, and you talked about all this happening during Lent. So, we were a week behind you. And
you always get the discounts. I always point that out, that you would always get the best. You could get the same candy at half price. And Father Pappas used to laugh all the time.
But the bunny ears were missing.
Yeah, things happen.
So we were just starting to go through in Sunday school the important parables and whatnot, trying to get a rhythm. Because listen, I'm not going to lie, it's hard getting the kids to Sunday school. Even for the parents coming, I don't have to tell you, but for people that don't know and don't live a church life, it's very hard. It's for some people, I'm not putting them down, I'm just saying it's sort of like number 10 on the list, because there's a birthday party and there's a basketball game and there's a soccer game, and for us, we're Sunday morning, that's it. And then of course, there are feast days, there's other there's obviously other services, but the main service, the Divine Liturgy, is Sunday, starts at 10, goes to 12-ish. So, it was hard enough, and then getting the kids engaged. We just started with, I did this last year, I have them write out their Lenten goals. And, I check back with them. I write out mine too. I'm accountable. And then that stopped. And then, Easter, as Christians, that's the resurrection. That's our
Super Bowl. That's our Super Bowl.
Right. So it all just, fell by the wayside, and all those people and obviously the financial, hey, here's breaking news. Churches don't just run automatically. We need membership and dues and donations and events and all that kind of stuff to make it run. So it was heartbreaking, and then we do a gala at the end of the year, which of course that was out. And I mentioned before about the Greek festivals. A lot, our church doesn't, because it's in the city and they don't close the street, and it's a whole nother thing. But in all the suburbs where you are in Long Island, all of those churches have huge festivals.
Yeah, there's a St. Paul in I think it's West Hempstead or Garden City, and it's a great feast. Great.
They're going to do that takeout, by the way. As a matter of fact, I was just talking to my sister. But yeah, just all of that, and And that was really heartbreaking. And so we had a Zoom Easter. So, with my relatives, it was just my husband and my husband and I broke the egg, we do the eggs.
Right.
It was just nothing. We tried, but it was a nothing burger. And that was really disappointing. And the rest of the year, Christmas, all of this is going to be, completely different. But
if I just point the virus has changed. We talked about how it changed education, how it's affected civil discourse. Our churches are going to go through a major redefining of who they are. To be honest, we were having in the Roman, in my parish, I'm the young deacon, by the way. I'm the young deacon. I know people can't see it, but like my whole beard is white. I was born in 1960, so it's just but the people have grown comfortable not going to church. There were a lot of people not going to church on March 5th.
Right.
But now we've developed a habit, and I think we're gonna have a tough time getting them back. I think we were losing to begin with. We're gonna have to have a whole new evangelization of what because look, we have good news, we have great news, and we're gonna have to find new ways. The security that we spoke about in the past in our past conversation in this last hour. That security for our churches, the assumption that would always work the way we want it to work, those are gone. We're gonna have to find new ways to capture the imagination of our families, and get them more involved.
So I did go to church once over the summer when they allowed. It was at that first weekend where they said you can have 25% capacity and whatnot. The church has been doing it online. We were doing it online beforehand, so we have a YouTube page. I have to tell you that probably the first few services I was able to sit and got into, and after that, I just couldn't hold my attention. And I love to pray, but there is something about being there. So when people say, "Oh, I watch it online," "Oh, I watch Joel Osteen on TV," "Oh, this, oh, that," and that's all fine. But there definitely is something to be said about going to church, being a community, praying together, having the priest, having the deacons. It's like Broadway in the sense of like, you can't watch Les Mis on PBS. Right. You can watch it, but it's not the same. It's certainly not the same experience, not even close. The camaraderie, we do coffee hour, and as Greeks, we're like there till 3:00 in the afternoon, and we're, and just all the good works that are done, and the charities, and we have the ladies, the philoptochos, and all the things that they do with feeding the homeless, and again, fundraising, and all that's gone. It's now apparently we're going to start with Sunday school again, so that'll be interesting. But what I wanted to ask you is, so you are well aware that our communion is with a common spoon, and with the chalice, and so there's a big controversy about that. And I won't say that it was never spoken about before. This has sort of kind of been happening, but we all take from the same spoon. So now, at least, and I'll just say what our priest is doing, which I think is probably, the higher up dictum, is that he puts the poor Father John, he's such a nice man. I feel so bad for him. Our priest is so terrific. He puts the spoon in your mouth. He says, open your mouth wide. He turns it so it can spill, takes it out so it doesn't touch your mouth. There is a napkin, but you can't use it to wipe. You have to, before we would wipe, it was just there to catch, just in case. And that's it. And then they have the bread, which they have it actually wrapped up in baggies, because we used to just have it in just a big gold bowl. So I'm personally having an issue. I had a name day a few days ago, and which I always certainly receive on my name day, and I'm not comfortable yet doing that. And there's two schools of thought in our church. One is they shouldn't have been doing that. They should have got rid of that. We should, blah, 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 blah. It's disgusting, this and that. And by the way, let me just add, nobody's a bigger germaphobe than I am. And when they were talking about the whole thing with the hand washing, I'm like, this is new? This is new. Okay. And then there are the other people. And when I say split, it's like 50-50 of nobody got sick before. We've been doing this for centuries. It is the body and blood of Christ. It's supposed to help us. It heals the sick, I'm going to do it anyway and whatever. And I have to tell you, because we were driving on Saturday, and so I was watching it online, and I was actually into it because I was in the car. So I was captured, but it was good. And there were a lot of people in church, and there were a lot of people that received communion. So, and I was proud of them, I was like, good for you. I mean, I got to kind of get over my own thing, but what are you doing in the Catholic Church? And like, what's your take on sort of what we're doing?
So it's important for our listeners to know is that for the Roman Church, the Greek Church, and the Episcopal Church, the Eucharist is center. That's the center of what we are, the body and blood of Christ. And that's why, we go to Mass, we receive communion. So in the Roman world, we used to share a cup. So there would be one cup, and there'd be one person giving out the bread, the body of Christ, and one person with the wine or the blood of Christ. And so you would take a sip, they would wipe it, and the next person would come, they'd twist the cup and move from there. So now we haven't had the cup since March, and even as a deacon, there are most times that I don't. Sometimes a priest will dip the bread into the wine, and so there are all kinds of things behind that. But for the most part, in the Roman Church, we've just stuck with bread. Now, for us, the priest, the deacon, or a Eucharistic minister will take the piece of bread, and for us, it's a round circle. It's a very flat bread, and we would give that, and it'll be in the palm of their hands, which is relatively new for us. That's from like 50 years ago we started doing that. And there are some who still want it on their mouth, and so you have to kind of. Someday we should do literally a spoof on Greek and Roman approaches to religion. I think we could do a series on that. But you have to kind of, you take the host out, and it's about the size of a quarter or a nickel, a little bigger than a nickel. And then you have to try and maneuver it onto the tongue without the tongue touching your hand. And it's like gymnastics, but it's also, and I don't want anybody to think I'm being disrespectful, because that bread is not bread to us, and that wine is not wine to us. And it is the source and summit of everything we do. So we're struggling with it like you are. We have trouble drinking from the same cup. I mean, sipping from the same spoon. I don't know how we would handle that. And I don't know what our Anglican brothers and sisters are doing, our Episcopal brothers and sisters are doing. But it's they actually do a lot what the Romans do. I always say the Episcopalians are like all the frills and half the guilt of Roman Catholicism.
Sometimes, because the Greek Church, right? And then I was with the Catholic Church. And then sometimes someone will say to me, like, I'll say, what are you? And they're like, I'm a Lutheran second. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means. All I know is that when I walk into one of your houses of worship, I look around and I'm like, where is everybody? Because like, there's nothing, you see all of our icons, and that we get iconography from Greece. I mean, they have like a little, like one piece of wood and then another piece of wood. It's like, could you spit? Like, could you put something,
You're 100% right. When I've gone into Greek churches, Roman churches have a lot of statues. We have a lot of stained glass. We got a lot of stuff, but compared to you guys, we're Protestants. I went in, there's a beautiful, beautiful church out in, I think Syosset, I'm not positive, but it's a beautiful.
Brookville.
Yes. I went for a baptism, and my baptisms are like 20 minutes. This baptism was like an hour and a half. And it's just, when I do my thing, it's really quick. Everything was done 3 times. We spit on the floor. We went over. It was great. And the priest was, I forget his name. What a wonderful man, though. Real good.
Father John?
Yeah, I think it was.
So he was in Brookville, and then he came to our parish like 6 years ago. Yeah, that's so funny.
I've never met a Greek priest I didn't like. I got to be honest. They've always been very welcoming, and they're always kissing me. That's just what you guys do. But you're right. Your senses are salted in an Orthodox church, and in many Catholic churches it's similar. Although you guys win, there's no doubt about that. You win, But then when you go into a Protestant church, like the Presbyterian or a Baptist or Anglican churches look just like Catholic churches. You really can't tell the difference unless you really you pay attention. But they just have a different emphasis. We emphasize sacraments. The priest is more than just a man. The priest represents God. He's the Christo persona. I'm saying that wrong, and I'm trying to use Greek words in front of a Greek. So I'm just going to say the person of Christ. I'm going to stick to English. And a sacramental people, and actually we can bring this full circle now. Sacramental people see things that others can't, won't, or don't. We have a sense of seeing reality that goes beyond the tangible. We're not afraid to talk about angels. We're not afraid to talk about demons. We're not afraid to think the saints are there for us, and the importance of the Blessed Mother, and all the different things that are so richly shared between the two brothers that don't talk. Rome and Constantinople. That's way back history stuff. Forgive me for going inside baseball on that, but we do have something that we can share with the world, and that's to be able to see the grace that abounds in cops, in teenagers, in racial struggles, in viral infections, in funeral directors trying to do the best they can, in kids taking care of us at Key Food or Kid Color, wherever we shop. That's what I think the Greek and the Roman mentality can see and believe, like we see with our hearts when we do it right. And I think the world is desperate for us to show them how.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the lack of compassion, and again, like I said, the violence, and even with the homeless, when I talk about it, like sometimes I catch myself, because I make it like them, and these are people. Everybody has a story. Some people put themselves in very bad circumstances and wound up, sort of getting there. Some people are mentally ill. They physically lost their job. Like, you don't know until you've interviewed them exactly what's been going on. And it's very disappointing. I mean, we've always had homeless in New York, although clearly not, I think, to this extent now, but there needs this. First of all, it's not just a New York problem. LA, San Francisco, you just go across America. I mean, it could be a suburb, it's not just the big cities. And there's like never we need to address this on a national level. And I don't say things like that often, I'm a little bit more of like a local person, but right. But this is like rampant. Like, we got to figure out something. With
such gifts that the country has been given, we need to figure a way to do better. And we were in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. We were going to Maine, and we stopped in there. And it's a quaint town, but like this is New York bias that I have, and I'm sure you share it. Like, we're the center of the universe, and New Hampshire and Maine, like you think it's different, but the homeless situation in Portsmouth was shocking to me. I'm expecting this New England kind of reality with some grandma coming out with corn chowder and having a great time there, and I'm looking, I'm saying, wow, these people are suffering terribly. It's wild.
Right. I could talk to you forever. You're so great. I miss you on the radio. You always comfort me. And I will have to come to a service that you do.
It'll be a lot shorter than what you used to, so we'll be able to go out for breakfast right afterwards.
I'll be like, that's it? Oh my gosh. Exactly. Can we do it again?
I gave a homily the other day, and it was 5 minutes long, and people were just cheering. So as I'm walking out, there's an old lady. This actually happened before the virus. I'm walking out, an old lady is saying, I love when Deacon Mac preaches. So I'm getting all puffed up. I like that. So, and the daughter sees me, and she pushes Mom along. She says, what was it, Mom? What was it about Deacon Mac's sermon that you loved? She says, I have no idea what he said, but he's loud and he's short. So it works out very well. So
it's about efficiency.
Exactly. So I have a request for you. Okay. So everybody is like a frustrated comic. So I worked hard. And I have a couple of funny jokes, but I can't tell them because like it'll ruin my reputation. Like, I'll tell them off the air.
Okay.
I want to offer you this one, and you can blank it out if you don't like it. And I realize how freaking lame this sounds.
Okay.
But with a comic, you were talking about religion. I want to offer you the one joke that I think works.
Okay.
All right. So a guy is smoking a cigarette. He's outside that place, and a very good doer comes over to him and looks at him and says, "You know, that's going to kill you." And he looks with great disdain. The guy takes the cigarette, blows the smoke into the man's face, and he says, "You know, my grandfather lived to 103. The guy said, "Did he smoke?" He said, "No, he minded his own freaking business."
I like that.
You're very kind. Even if you didn't think it was funny, you did laugh.
That was my mother's favorite saying. Mind your business. I love it.
I can't thank you enough for letting me be part of this, and you're delightful as well. This time went very, very quickly, and I look forward to our paths crossing again.
This is a long time coming. I wanted to have you on. Now, do you want can people follow you on Twitter and Instagram?
Yeah, my Twitter, I've actually been down on Twitter, but not down on it. I mean, I still like it and stuff, but they can, it's KevMac71 at Twitter. That's my Twitter handle. I got to do more stuff. If they want to get in touch with me, they can go to Xaverian and find our website, and it's mac@xaverian.org. Just simple MAC@xaverian.org. And I'd be happy to speak to anybody who'd like to listen. Or I'd like to listen to anybody who wants to speak.
And let me just say, on your Instagram, you have very delicious pieces of meat and very, very, very. I love the way you're very cavornious. You love, it's like I love.
As I say, I work at this.
I love it. I love it. It's good to have it.
Instagram is KevMac712. They're very welcome to follow me on Instagram and see what I'm eating and drinking on any given my kids.
Scott. Well, and you know what's so funny? I only drink red wine, and it's like 2 glasses a month. But when I see your scotch, I'm like, that looks so inviting. That looks so. And you always have like a fireplace in the background. Or something.
Yeah. Gina and I work really hard at that. And it's stereotypes come from someplace, and we do enjoy a cocktail on the weekends.
That's great. I highly recommend that. So thank you so much to Deacon. Will you ever be a reverend, or is that?
No. Well, I think in your church they call them reverend deacons. I'm not sure. So we just go by the title.
I got confused.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's good reason for it. And so I'm able to have a family. So Catholic priests they're celibate. They don't have family. There's a few loopholes, but not enough for us to worry about here. So I'm very happy being a deacon. My wife still likes me, so I'm still allowed in the house. I'm not looking to change that.
Okay, and after all that time together,
Exactly. We're married 33 years.
Wow, that's great. That's great. My husband and I, we're married 11. I would say after about a week in lockdown, we ran out of things to talk about. But anyway,
a week? You got that far. Good for you.
Exactly. Can't thank you enough. And I am Ellen Karras. Please follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Greek Chick Comic, or Facebook, Ellen Karras Greek Goddess Comedy. My website, ellenkarras.com, and also on my website are, obviously, this podcast and a lot of my other episodes, all my seasons 1 through 6. So give me a follow, and till next time, thank you so much. Bye.